Hey, welcome to the channel. Today's topic, advanced map control theory. We're going to try to provide everyone from beginner all the way to the champion level something that they might not have known about map control and hopefully improve your game by the end of this video. Okay, so what is map control? It's that thing in ranked that your randos never do. There's more to it than that though. Let's start with our broader goal here, which is to win more games, which means you need to win more rounds. And to win more rounds, you either need to plant the diffuser as an attacker, stop the diffuser plant, or eliminate all the rest of the team. Or we could pray that someone on the other team made the smallest mistake and it gets them team killed. Out of those approaches, eliminating the other team is the most accessible tactic to use. However, Siege is kind of cool because you can play a team that has better mechanics than you by employing a better strategy. If you're watching Pro League, you're going to hear the commentators reference map control throughout the entire game. Why is that? It's because the announcers need something fancy to say when one of the attackers enter into an empty room. But for real, you guys, the simple answer is that having map control wins you games. The more complex answer is that both attackers and defenders need map control for different reasons. Defenders need to be able to burn time for the attackers, cover their backs, and give them an ability to retreat and be able to rotate, while attackers need to be able to set up their approach, gather intel, and create a flank watch. You might have noticed that attack and defense have two different kinds of map control that they need to employ, and a lot of this revolves around the attackers having better guns, but the defenders have the time on their side. Imagine you're crushing on a girl that's way out of your league, but she is approaching 30. So what we're gonna do is go over both separately and go in pretty in depth, and honestly this might be just a part 1 of a part 2 because there's so much to cover here in one video. Map control for the defenders really revolves around running the attackers out of time. The second part of that is also giving your team the ability to rotate or retreat into the bomb if they need to. You've got 3 roles on defense in Siege. You've got anchors, you've got roamers, and you've got map control. The 4th unofficial role is that guy that just peeks everything and is just a complete troll. And playing map control is kind of like being a middle child, at least at the lower levels. The anchors are the ones that are clutching rounds, the roamers are getting a lot of kills, and the map control guy isn't getting a whole lot of attention because depending on where they push, he might not even really run into anything. Having a good map control player on your team can win you a lot of games, and depending on what level you are, learning how to play map control can immediately put you up a couple ranks. So before we get into how to maintain map control and what characters to pick, there's some things you should know about each bomb site. Each bomb site is going to have a soft wall between 2 of the bombs. There's also always going to be a direct entrance into the bomb from the outside. You'll always see 2 stairs that allow for a rotate either above or below the floor, and at least 1 soft floor and a hatch in each bomb site. You'll also see a hard wall without an entrance that kind of protects anchors and lets them, cover their back as they get into that position where it's just them versus whoever's left. There are some exceptions to these rules, but then it's kind of like that map's thing. But this is a good baseline knowledge for what we're about to get into next. What part of the map you end up controlling is going to be determined on the needs of your team. So whatever your team isn't covering is what you need to cover. But if you're playing in a team, you could predetermine these things beforehand when you're looking at the map, or even come up with a game plan that you're going to use every time and get better at. When you're picking a place to maintain map control at, you want to think about 3 things. Do you have a spot to retreat back into? Do you have coverage for whenever anyone makes an entrance? And are you protecting from a line of sight and protecting your anchor? Alright, let's talk about what character to take. See, a lot of people say that you should either switch between a bunch of different characters or just play one character and get really good at them. And I think when you first start the game, you definitely want to pick one character, learn how to play the game with them, and then you could open it up to other people. But for the sake of example, we're going to go over a few operators that are going to help you kind of play different types of map control that's going to really up your game. So if you're in a tight space, you probably want to take Smoke. His gas canisters stay there for a really long time, take out a lot of damage, close off a line of sight, and he has a shotgun. But if you're in a place that you need to control that has a lot of doors, too many to look at one time, you might want to take Kapkan, because he's either going to give you the information of what they're coming from because they're shooting at it, or they're going to explode and you're going to know where they're coming from. Good luck picking Kapkan though, he's like a 200% ban rate. If you're in a place that has a lot of windows, you might want to take Frost. Frost has the Frost maps and they have to choose between shooting the Frost maps or shooting you. Or if you're in a place with a lot of corners and you're playing against a rush heavy team, Lesion is really going to slow that down. Obviously there's other map control characters in the game, but those are just a few examples. Something I see a lot of players get wrong about map control is that they're not pre-firing doors enough. The idea is to waste their time and to keep them away, and yeah, there's a chance that you could run out of ammo, but there's also a chance that you could pre-fire and take someone out. There's also nothing wrong with retreating at some point. You've got to understand when it's time to give up and go back, but you also have to communicate when you've given up that map control. You have to let them know on your team, like, hey, I don't have have control over this place anymore. So if you're going to rotate, you're probably going to run into these guys. You have to let your anchors know, hey, I'm coming in there. Do you need an angle that I need to hold? And maybe I need to hold into that room that I was in. And don't forget that barricades, though they are really a priority for the anchors to have, if there's any left, go ahead and throw them up. That's going to help you protect you from any of the advances if they blow up a soft wall or something like that and give you too many angles to look at. Okay, so next I want to commentate on a game clip that I have here. Basically, I'm going to show you the setup as I do with Fenrir and kind of my thought process here. What I'm trying to achieve is to basically keep control of the hallway entrances into the bomb sites. I'm on round 3 here with my team that I play with pretty regularly. I already know who's going to be anchoring and who's going to be doing what. And before the round even starts, I'm looking at the map and thinking about how the other team is approaching and what I think is going to be the best way to stop them and to kind of create a crossfire, a tactical 90 on them that'll make it very difficult for them to ever enter the bomb site. Setup as Fenrir takes a really long time, where other players on my team don't take as much time, so you're not going to see me any barricade anything this round. And also, I'm kind of setting up my gadget in places that are, 1, going to give me the ability to rotate later, 2, help my teammates, especially the anchors if anyone comes in on them, and then 3, kind of give me intel on where they're coming from. You're also going to see me set up barbed wire as a sound cue, but also to slow down the push a little bit. And then the last thing you're going to see me do is put a barricade on the room behind me. It's not very likely that they're going to come through that way, but it's also really important that I know that if they do, I can hear them. Because I have the barbed wire down the hallway and the barricade behind me, I have sound cues to tell me if anyone's coming from the back or to the right. So my primary focus here is going to be looking into that room that's off to the left and the staircase, because those are the 2 highest likely entrances for this team to come through. It turns out that the team didn't push from that direction whatsoever, which is fine. Osa came in and broke down the barricade, which gave me my sound cue that someone was behind me. It pushed me out of my spot, but it gave me an opportunity to go back to the hallway and still maintain control there. As you can see, I'm dealing with a lot of the enemy team here, but because I set up my Fenrirs and I set up the barbed wire, it makes it a little bit easier for me to come and take them out. I want you to take notice that I have control over the entire east side of the building right now. My team is creating crossfires, but I can basically handle it myself because I'm employing my gadgets correctly, with the intent to do map control. I need to retreat back into the bomb to make sure that I have all my ammo reloaded and I get a sense of where everyone is on the map. Then I'm going to step back outside and maintain control of the hallway. Ironically, when this round is over, I asked my team why they thought that we just won that round so heavily, and a lot of them said that I had taken out 4 people from the other team, but the reality is that Osa had that portion of the map that restricted me from moving backwards, and she gave it up to go rejoin her team because she saw that they were kind of losing gunfights. She thought that it would be better for her to come and use her shield to help that out. But this is a really good example of why it's so important to maintain map control on attack too, and a lot of the times that you're losing, you're not really realizing it, but people are giving up map control just because they get into a little bit of a firefight. They might lose a little bit of health, and now all of a sudden they've just given up that portion of the map, which allows the other team just to kind of take advantage and create angles that wouldn't be there otherwise. So like I said, this is a very in-depth topic. It's there's a lot to it, and I'll probably make a part 2 on it if you guys want. But before we move on to attack, I want to address something that is very common amongst this entire community, which is the fact that they will always pick the upstairs bombs before the below bombs. And the reason why is because the vert plate can be so devastating. The downstairs bombs have a lot easier walls to reinforce, but they have the soft walls above that you have to deal with. Having a map control player on your team that can really enforce the upstairs is going to be able to give you bombs that are harder to attack overall. Because the community at large doesn't really pick the downstairs bombs because of the vert play, picking those downstairs bombs are going to put the attacking team in a position where they're attacking something that they haven't attacked over and over and over again for the last couple of years. So having a Frost upstairs or maybe a Kapkan or a Fenrir allows for a really hard bomb to attack that the other team isn't really used to. Alright, let's move on to attack. The 2 things that you need to realize about being on attack is 1, you're fighting against the clock, and 2, you have better weapons than the defenders, which means you're really playing off of what the defenders want to set up. The game is adjusted to how the defense sets up, and as attackers you need to adjust. That's why in the prep phase you can switch as an attacker, but you can't switch as a defender. So the defenders are going to essentially set up their bomb site to maintain map control at least 1 room outside of the bomb. You need to bring the attacker that is going to most likely stop them from being able to do that. Your success in countering is going to come down to the drone phase. A lot of people during the drone phase are under the impression that when you find the bomb, that's kind of all you're supposed to do during that time. But the reality is that you should have everyone on your team going to a different bomb site, and once someone figures out what the bomb is, then you should be figuring out where you want to enter at, what rooms you want to take control over, and how you're going to to approach that. And then the last thing you need to do is be able to switch your spawn and switch your operator depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish in countering the other team. So what are good places for the drone to be? Well, let's do a little process of elimination. Don't get it destroyed inside of the bomb site. Don't leave it outside. Don't put it into a random room. Maybe after you find the bomb, maybe you could just go and put it into the place you're going to enter in at, so you don't have, less time for you to try to get your drone out there. What I'd like to do now is kind of go over some commonly picked map control operators and how to counter them. So for Kapkan, a really good counter is Brava. She can switch over those traps, so there's no real way for the defenders to know whether or not it's been switched over. But for a Fenrir trap, that's not really all that great for Brava because the defenders aren't going to push you, and if they do run into that, they can blind you at the same time. So it's better just take a twitch and probably destroy the gadget. Frost mats can easily be destroyed with grenades, though people don't really like to use them up for that. So you're going to have to choose between using a grenade on a frost trap or having to push from a different angle. Twitch can also destroy Goyo traps, which are extremely effective in this game because they last forever now, and there's no way to extinguish any fire. Tachanka doesn't really have a counter, but you can fight fire with fire, so bringing in a Capitao to keep him in place while your team opens up a line of sight and kind of creates a crossfire on him is probably your best bet. Clash is probably one of the easiest counters in the game because all it requires is one grenade and she's kind of taken out. A more direct counter is Nomad. You can set up her air jabs on the side of Clash and it makes for a pretty easy takeout. Now that we've gotten those counters out of the way, let's talk a little bit more about lines of sight and map control. If you bring a Hibana to the fight, you can open up a bunch of walls from really far away. And if you remember, I said that the defenders have worse guns than the attackers. The attackers have a lot more range, less damage drop off, and the defenders that do have long range weapons, they don't have gadgets that work well with them. So by breaking up hard walls like that, you can create these gigantic lines of sight and take control over multiple rooms inside of the map. The last important piece of map control for attack is Flank Watch. Flank Watch makes it difficult for any of the roamers or map control players that are not actively taking on gunfights to come and rotate and put pressure on you from another side. This allows you to focus your attack and start to take down pieces of the map without having to worry about other players coming in. These other defenders are going to have to flush back into the bomb and retake it, which again is hard because their weapons aren't nearly as good. Okay, last thing I want to do before we close out the video is provide a little commentary on what I think is probably one of my best map control moments on attack. I'm playing Capitao here. I've got an acute awareness of where everyone on my team is right now, where they're pushing, and kind of where I need to hold to make sure that while they're taking over that section of the map, that I can protect them from downstairs. Currently, I have someone moving in upstairs, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into the hall and try to hold this for a second. I know that there's probably going to be at least one person upstairs, and yep, I can hear him right there. So I'm going to back out a little bit and give that guy upstairs a chance to get back into a position where they can take him out. Looks like there's another person in the hall here, so I'm just going to have to take them on really quick and then worry about the Valkyrie in a little bit. The Valkyrie is distracted with the person upstairs, which allows me to make a movement into this room and hold this portion of the map. Unfortunately, my guy upstairs does get hit with the cav, and it basically lets off all of our positions. And really quick, we're going to lose our man advantage, and that's going to put me in a spot where I'm going to have a lot of people coming at me at one time. So I'm going to do here is back off, remember what angles that they have and that hard wall behind me, and just kind of through process of elimination, figure out where they're going to come from and listen to see where they're coming from. So right now, I'm taking out these two, and I've got one left. So I'm going to go back into the place that I know is safe, which is the hallway, and just try to listen to see which way Cav is coming from. Right now, she's not using her ability. She probably ran out, taking out the rest of my team, and I could hear her upstairs. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready for the gunfight and take her out and close out the round. I hope that you gained something from this video. There's a high likelihood that I'm going to make a part 2 that's much longer and more in depth. So let me know in the comments if you want to see that. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Keep shooting straight, folks.